One time I got a bunch of books from this one farmer, and in it was an 1850 edition of Alexander Pope's translation of the Iliad.
In February 1982, Ed Asner supported medical aid for El Salvador. 3 months later, his award-winning show, Lou Grant, was canceled. CBS said ratings dropped, but the show was still beating many others that stayed on air. Behind the scenes, companies like Kimberly-Clark pulled their ads. Conservative groups organized boycotts. CBS President William Paley got personal calls from worried sponsors. The network insisted politics had nothing to do with it, but almost everyone knew better. This is what CBS never wanted you to know. Ed Asner was born on November 15, 1929, in Kansas City, Missouri. His parents were Russian Jewish immigrants who had fled their homelands hoping for a better life. His father, Morris, started a scrap metal business, while his mother, Lizzie, carried the old traditions with her. Growing up during the Great Depression in a close Jewish community, Ed learned early what struggle meant. His parents held tightly to their Orthodox faith, but Ed was determined to find his own way. He even worked hard to lose the heavy accent his siblings had, sensing that if he wanted a bigger life, he needed to sound different. It was one of the first ways he began shaping himself into something new without ever forgetting where he came from. At Wyandotte High School, Ed didn't jump into drama clubs like you might expect. Instead, he found his passion behind a microphone, working at the school's radio station. He loved the way his voice could create a world of its own. He once said he thought he was too plain-looking to be a star, but through his voice, he could be anyone, even Errol Flynn. A teacher once told him, "You can't make a living at it," advice that probably made him laugh years later when he was winning Emmys. By the time he graduated in 1947, Ed had already built the tools he needed to stand out, though he still didn't know exactly where he was headed. After high school, Ed went to the University of Chicago, acting in small stage plays. But life wasn't simple. He soon found himself working rough jobs, hanging steel hooks at a mill in Gary, Indiana, sweating on the assembly lines at Ford and GM, and driving taxis through the busy streets of Chicago. For a short time, he even tried selling encyclopedias, but quit because he hated how the sales tricks made him feel. These years hardened him, but they also gave him something rare: a deep understanding of working people. He would carry that sense of realness into every character he ever played. In 1951, Ed's life took another turn. The Korean War was raging, and he was drafted. But instead of being sent into battle, he was stationed in France with the Army Signal Corps. His job was simple: typing schedules and paperwork. It wasn't the glory he might have imagined, but it ended up being something better. While on duty, he got involved with Army theater groups, acting in plays that traveled from base to base across Europe. For the first time, Ed felt what it was like to perform in front of real audiences, and he realized that acting wasn't just a side interest, it was what he was meant to do. When he came back to Chicago in 1953, Ed was a different man. He joined forces with a small group of artists to start the Playwrights Theater Company. They weren't famous, and the pay was low, but the work mattered. It was raw, honest, and full of energy. Even as the group started moving toward improvisational theater, Ed knew he wanted something else. In 1955, he took a gamble and moved to New York. In New York, opportunity finally knocked. He landed a major role in an off-Broadway production of the Threepenny Opera, playing the scheming Jonathan Peachum. The show became a massive hit, running for years. The steady paycheck kept him alive in the tough New York scene, but after a while, Ed felt restless. He worried he was forgetting what it meant to really act, so he left the show, looking for roles that challenged him. Soon after, he made his Broadway debut alongside Jack Lemmon in Face of a Hero. It should have been a huge moment, but the play didn't do well commercially. With a growing family to support, Ed had no choice but to start taking television roles. He had already dipped his toes into TV back in 1957 with Studio One, but now he leaned into it fully. He balanced small TV parts with appearances in early Shakespeare in the Park productions, refusing to let go of his love for real theater even as he chased more stable work. By 1961, Ed realized New York alone wasn't enough. He packed up and moved to Los Angeles, betting that television would offer more chances. Throughout the 1960s, he became one of those familiar faces everyone recognized, but few could name. He He played tough guys, authority figures, and villains on shows like The Untouchables, Gunsmoke, Mission Impossible, The Fugitive, and many more. He was always working, but real stardom still seemed just out of reach. By the end of the 1960s, things weren't looking great. Ed was now in his 40s, supporting a family, and wondering if he would ever really make it. He even started thinking maybe it was time to give up acting altogether. Then, in 1970, he heard about an audition for a new show starring Mary Tyler Moore. The character was Lou Grant, a tough, no-nonsense newsman. Ed auditioned, but he blew it the first time. He asked for a second chance, and this time he got it right. Still, when he tested with Mary Tyler Moore herself, his performance shook again. Mary reportedly looked at the producers with a worried face and asked, "Are you sure?" They didn't hesitate. They said, "That's your Lou Grant." It was a decision that changed everything. In his audition, Asner came up with the now famous line, "You've got spunk. I hate spunk," but it almost ruined his chances. He delivered it so harshly that he scared everyone in the room. As he walked to his car afterward, he felt sure he had lost the job. Then, in a bold move, he marched back upstairs and asked the producers to show him how they wanted Lou Grant to be played. They gave him another chance. This time, Asner and Mary Tyler Moore read together, and it was pure magic. The chemistry was so strong that no one could imagine anyone else playing Lou. Later, people said Mary Moore wasn't sure about him at first, but she always denied it. Years later, Asner said that when they performed the spunk line in front of a live audience, the reaction was so loud, it felt like he could command the crowd to walk off a cliff. Asner didn't just make up the character of Lou Grant from thin air. He modeled him after the kind of real, hard-working journalists he admired. Lou was a TV newsman, but he had the heart of an old newspaper veteran. When the spin-off Lou Grant was made, they gave the character a background that fit the gritty newspaper world. Inspired by the realistic style of the movie, All the President's Men. Asner took the job seriously, once saying he thought of himself like a fine musical instrument, ready to play when the writing was good enough. His mix of toughness and warmth struck a deep chord with viewers. Keeping the same character for the new show wasn't just smart, it made television history. Behind the scenes, real friendships grew among the cast. Asner called it the best ensemble he ever worked with. He was especially close with co-stars like Gavin MacLeod. Their bond showed on-screen and off. When the show ended, Lou's final words, "I treasure you people," felt like they weren't just part of the script. They were true feelings shared by everyone who had worked together for so many years. Ed Asner's work didn't just win hearts, it won awards too. He picked up 3 Emmy Awards for playing Lou Grant in the Mary Tyler Moore Show. At one Emmy ceremony, he joked about being up against younger and prettier actors like Rob Reiner and Ted Knight. He made the audience laugh, saying that now he had 2 Emmy statues at home and would offer the Academy the pick of the litter if they had more. Asner always thanked the writers first, knowing that without them, he'd just be another pretty face. His talent and his character made history again when he became the only actor ever to win Emmys for playing the same role in both a comedy and a drama. In 1977, Ed Asner took an even bigger risk. When Lou Grant premiered as a serious 1-hour drama, it changed television forever. Instead of staying at a TV station, Lou moved to a big city newspaper, the Los Angeles Tribune. The show creators didn't just want another sitcom, they wanted something bold, inspired by the honest journalism seen in All the President's Men. Lou was a little more serious now, a little less gruff, but still deeply human. Around him was a whole new cast, reporters, photographers, and a tough newspaper owner named Margaret Pynchon, based on real-life women who ran major newspapers. This time, the show wasn't just about laughs. It tackled real issues and told hard-hitting stories that made people think. Each Monday night, Lou Grant went where most TV shows were too afraid to go. They talked about nuclear threats, mental illness, child abuse, prostitution, and even gay rights, topics that were considered too controversial for prime time. They didn't just show the problems, they showed how journalists struggled with how to report them honestly. It wasn't sensational, It was real. Viewers got a rare look at the heart and the ethics of real journalism, making Lou Grant not just another TV show, but a mirror held up to society. One episode in particular shook people to their core. It was called Nazi, and it aired just a few weeks into the first season. It told the story of a neo-Nazi leader who was secretly Jewish, a plot based on a true story from the 1960s. Actor Peter Weller gave a haunting performance, and the episode included actual footage from Nazi propaganda films. Some sponsors and viewers were uncomfortable, but critics praised the episode for its bravery. It wasn't there to shock, it was there to make people think about hate, identity, and the ugly parts of human nature. As the years went on, Ed Asner did something no one else had ever done. He won Emmys for Lou Grant, both as a funny boss on a sitcom and as a serious editor on a drama. Between his wins for The Mary Tyler Moore Show and Lou Grant, plus awards for Rich Man, Poor Man, and Roots, he collected 7 Emmy Awards by 1980. No one had ever done that before, and no one has done it since. His incredible range showed that a great character, played with heart and honesty, could survive in any kind of story. In 1980, Ed Asner was a household name thanks to his role on the hit show Lou Grant. But behind the scenes, something bigger was happening. That summer, around 67,000 performers walked off the job in a massive strike against the studios. Most big stars stayed quiet, but not Asner. Instead of hiding, he became one of the loudest voices on the picket lines. Cameras caught him leading protests, standing with actors who barely made a living, while others lived like kings. His message was simple. The stars would survive the strike, but the working actors would not. The strike dragged on for 94 days, delaying TV seasons and even the Emmy Awards. When it finally ended, Asner wasn't just a famous actor anymore. He had become the face of a new kind of Hollywood activism. Fresh off the strike, Asner pushed for something that shocked almost everyone in the industry. In December 1981, just weeks after becoming president of the Screen Actors Guild, he called for a merger with the Screen Extras Guild. He believed that by joining forces, actors could stand stronger against powerful studios. But many veterans, including Charlton Heston, fought him hard. Lawsuits were threatened. Tempers exploded in meetings. Asner insisted that all SAG members should vote by mail, not just the ones in Hollywood. "You're either a union or you're not," he said bluntly. In the end, even though a majority supported the merger, it failed to meet the high approval threshold. It would take years for the idea to finally come back around. His rise to SAG president in November 1981 was just as surprising. He beat out the more conservative candidates, even though many warned that his political stands could ruin his acting career. He didn't care. He had already stood before thousands of union workers in Los Angeles, making it clear he would fight for them. His win showed that regular actors wanted change. 2 years later, despite growing controversies, Asner won re-election with an even bigger margin. While all this was happening, Asner wasn't just talking about labor rights. In August 1981, he took a stand that almost no other celebrity dared to. When air traffic controllers went on strike and President Reagan fired them all, Asner showed up at airports to picket with them. He raised money for their families and spoke out in support. Many thought he was crazy to take on Reagan, but Asner believed that if unions didn't stand together, none of them would survive. Then came the moment that changed everything. In February 1982, Asner stood on the steps of the State Department and handed over a $25,000 check for medical aid to civilians caught in El Salvador's civil war. He wasn't just another face in the crowd. The press swarmed him. His words were fiery. He slammed United States involvement in the war, warning that America was backing the wrong side. Within days, the backlash exploded. Headlines screamed about his speech. Washington insiders fumed. Suddenly, Asner was no longer just an actor with opinions. He was painted as a dangerous radical. The truth was, Asner had been pulled into the El Salvador crisis after a nun showed him horrifying footage of civilian deaths. Shocked and angry, he agreed to help raise money through a group called Medical Aid for El Salvador. He wasn't alone. Stars like Penny Marshall and Howard Hesseman joined him. They made it clear that their aid was only for medical supplies, not weapons. But the damage was done. To many people, Ed Asner was now a traitor. Making matters worse, Asner didn't clearly say he was speaking as a private citizen. As president of SAG, everything he said seemed like it spoke for the entire union. After the uproar, he called a press conference and admitted he had made a mistake by not drawing that line. But he didn't back down from his right to speak out. Charlton Heston and others tried to recall him, but the SAG board voted almost unanimously to keep him. Then came the moment that truly sealed his fate. When a reporter asked what he would do if El Salvador's people chose a communist government, Asner answered without thinking it through. "If it's the government that the people choose, let them have it," he said. Right away, he knew he had blown it. He later said he felt doomed the second the words left his mouth. Conservative media seized on it. Even though they never quoted that line directly, they hammered him as a communist sympathizer. Security had to be stepped up around him and his family after anonymous threats came in. Behind the scenes, the attacks weren't random. A new conservative group quickly organized a boycott against Lou Grant. Advertisers were pressured to pull their commercials. Viewers were urged to switch off the show. Asner's critics called him the Jane Fonda of Latin America. Even President Reagan criticized him. The campaign was coordinated and brutal. Lou Grant producers begged Asner to stay quiet, but the damage was already done. His political stance had cost him his show and nearly his career. Not long after this, Kimberly-Clark Corporation, which had 2 factories in El Salvador, pulled all of its advertising from Asner's hit TV show Lou Grant. The timing was no accident. The Wall Street Journal later reported that the company's decision came right after Asner's fundraising. When asked about it, Asner didn't hold back. He said it felt like blacklisting. He even accused Kimberly-Clark of having ties to the ultra-conservative John Birch Society, though the company's PR director, Maureen Ware, strongly denied it. To make things worse, when a viewer wrote a positive letter about Lou Grant to Kimberly-Clark, they got a blunt reply saying the company had dropped all advertising from the show. Officially, Kimberly-Clark claimed it had nothing to do with politics, but the timing made it hard to believe. Things didn't stop there. After Kimberly-Clark pulled out, other big advertisers started to follow. Companies like Cadbury and Vidal Sassoon also pulled their support by the spring of 1982. Behind the scenes, conservative groups were putting heavy pressure on the show's sponsors, especially after Asner's involvement with the El Salvador cause. The president of Vidal Sassoon even contacted CBS President William Paley to talk about the growing controversy. When viewers asked Cadbury and Vidal Sassoon why they pulled their ads, the companies tried to defend their moves, but it sounded shaky. Meanwhile, a New York congressman named John Le Boutelier stirred up even more trouble. He sent out 50,000 letters comparing Asner to Jane Fonda and called for a boycott of the show's sponsors. One by one, the advertisers fell away. It was clear they were scared of getting caught up in a political storm. This wave of corporate pullouts showed just how vulnerable a TV show could be when sponsors got nervous, even if the show had won 13 Emmy Awards, 2 Golden Globes, and a Peabody. Then came the biggest blow. On May 18, 1982, CBS announced they were canceling Lou Grant after 5 strong seasons. They said it was because of falling ratings, but a lot of people didn't buy it. Just a year earlier, the show had been ranked 27th with a solid audience. Even though the ratings had dropped slightly, from an average of 19.6 to 16.6, it was still doing better than many other shows that stayed on the air. The fact that CBS pulled the plug just 3 months after Asner's controversial fundraising made the whole thing look suspicious. CBS executives insisted politics had nothing to do with it. One executive said, "It was hardly a show you would want to hold on to, but it had nothing to do with Ed Asner's politics." But few were convinced. When Lou Grant got canceled in 1982, Ed Asner's career hit a wall. He had been one of the most respected faces on television, but almost overnight, it felt like the industry turned its back on him. CBS never clearly admitted that Asner's political views were the reason his show got axed, but critics and insiders could see what was happening. TV critic Tom Shales said it best. CBS didn't do a great job hiding it. Asner himself was sure about it. Later he said, "Oh, I don't think there's any question that politics played a big part. One moment that really sealed his fate came when Asner, as president of the Screen Actors Guild, refused to approve an award for Ronald Reagan. When people questioned him about it, he didn't sugarcoat it. Reagan had just crushed the Air Traffic Controllers Union, and Asner couldn't stand by and pretend nothing happened. Years later, he admitted he regretted losing his show, but not standing up for what he believed in. But losing Lou Grant wasn't the end of the punishment. Even though the show had won 13 Emmys for tackling big social issues like nuclear threats and LGBTQ rights, Asner found himself increasingly shut out. Hollywood, once a place that celebrated him, now treated him like a problem. The fear spread beyond him, too. The atmosphere felt like the old Hollywood blacklist days, when speaking your mind could destroy your career. Asner stayed sensitive to censorship all his life. Decades later, he even joined a sold-out event at the Writers Guild of America to mark the 70th anniversary of the Hollywood 10 standing up to Congress. But back in the 80s, it wasn't just cold shoulders he faced. His home and the SAG offices were vandalized with hateful messages. Death threats rolled in, especially from militant anti-Castro groups. In Miami, he even needed a bodyguard just to appear on a radio show. It was a shocking fall for a man once loved by millions. The backlash didn't just hurt Asner, it sent a warning through the whole industry. Speak out, and you might be next. His friend Kim Fellner, who worked at SAG at the time, remembered how fast the blowback came after Asner spoke about El Salvador's right to self-rule. During the Reagan years, political opinions could end a career in an instant. When asked directly if Lou Grant was canceled as political punishment, Asner didn't hesitate. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Asner later pointed out how those same United States policies he protested ended up creating today's immigration crises, as people fled violence in countries like El Salvador and Honduras. Despite everything he lost, Asner never wavered. He openly supported progressive causes for the rest of his life, and even joined the Democratic Socialists of America. Looking back, he said simply, "I felt very good doing it. I felt very proud." Slowly, he built himself back up, becoming one of the most honored actors in Emmy history. He ended up winning 7 Emmys out of 17 nominations, a record for a male performer. 5 of those awards were for playing Lou Grant. 3 came when he was part of The Mary Tyler Moore Show as a funny supporting character. 2 more came when Lou Grant became the serious lead in a dramatic series. It made Asner one of the only actors ever to win an Emmy for the same role in both comedy and drama. His other Emmys came from powerful performances in Rich Man, Poor Man, and Roots, both huge miniseries in the 1970s. Asner never stopped working. He moved into film and voice acting, giving life to Carl Fredricksen in Pixar's Up and playing Santa Claus in the Christmas classic Elf. Even as he grew older, he kept popping up on TV shows like The Practice, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, The Good Wife, Cobra Kai, and Dead to Me. Wherever there was a good role, Asner showed up and delivered. Even as he entered his final years, Asner never softened his political voice. He proudly called himself an old-time lefty and didn't shy away from the word socialist when most people in Hollywood were scared of it. Long before Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez became famous, Asner was fighting for the same ideas. He believed a strong country needed to guarantee health care, education, fair housing, and food for everyone. In one of his last interviews, when he was asked about a lawsuit against SAGAFTRA Health Fund over changes that hurt older actors, he simply said, "That's right, I'm one of the leaders in that." Even at 91, he was still in the fight. His friend, Gabriel Carteris, who also served as president of the Screen Actors Guild, said it best. There were very few actors like Ed Asner, people who were willing to risk everything they had to stand up for what they believed was right.